welcome. Is this on? Is this working? What a great place. I mean, we're in the right place today.
That's right.
You know, you see extension, and I'm so happy and excited to be here. Today, we want to talk about Black Business Month, and please don't get it confused with Black History Month. Black history I love. I mean, I'm all about Black history. In fact, personally, my great-grandmother, whose name was Caroline Little, was so impressed with Frederick Douglass that she changed the whole family name to Frederick from Little. And that's my namesake, Frederick Douglass. So I was telling Frederick over here, I said, from now on, I'm gonna walk around here with Frederick. And you know, everybody calls me Fred, but I'm gonna be Frederick from now on. So I got a new badge. Plus, he gave me the history of my name too. It means, what's the ruler? No, judge. Tell everybody what.
Fred is peace in Old German, and Richter is the judge, so you're the judge of peace.
The judge of peace. Remember that, Mr. President. So anyway, I'm just very excited, and as a co-founder of the National Black Business Month, it was way back in 2004. That's like 17, 18 years ago. You know, I was telling John Templeton, who was my other co-founder of this National Black Business Month, I said, it feels so good for Black history, but I would feel better with some money in my pocket.
There you go.
And I said, okay, we've gone with the history, we celebrated, now let's get on with the economic. You know, it's not civil rights, nowadays it's silver rights. That's what we want to do. But it was not a slam dunk, by no means. It took us a number of years. We thought that, you know, a lot of people would jump on the train and we would have Black History Month all over. And it's taken us 18 years to try. I think we have about 30 some states. Europe is beginning to pick up. Black Business Month is in Germany, and they celebrate it widely. It's in the country of Germany, and I think a few of the European countries and other countries around. So, but it's all about acknowledging that there is Black business, and we even started off. John had he circulated every year the calendar, 31 ways. 31 days, 31 ways to participate with Black business. So I just came back and I want to thank the team that put this together here. And I assume that the president will introduce everybody later, but put it together while I was gone. So I'm very happy that we pushed on to this as such, and I just want to give an example. So I personally want to thank the panelists, the speaker, Cheryl, and everyone who came out a little early in the morning for me to get here at 8:30. But I want to thank everyone from coming out, and particularly our corporate partners. And when we talk about Black business in this city, 1% participation, Black business. In this state, 1%. And it's not just like that, it's Proposition 209 that has set us back 30 years. We have to overcome this. Whatever we need to do, we need to do it. And we're getting to a point almost by any means necessary. But we have to overcome it. And that was 1996. And many people know Eva Patterson, the attorney. She led the effort a number of years, but we cannot give up. We cannot give up. And so, but I want to give an example of one of the things we can do. We're sitting here, right next door here is Salesforce, tallest building west of Mississippi. I just came back from Chicago. It's the tallest building, 100 stories. I happen to be the president of the commission that gave the land to that building. I'm president of the Parking and Traffic Commission for the city and county of San Francisco. And so the first people who came in was the Department of Transportation. They put in that fine transportation center over there. Black business only got one contract. And I said, boy, I mean, I've been furious ever since. But I was talking to a young lady who was about 28, 29 years old, and she just got promoted in Salesforce. And she just happened to be the goddaughter of my son. And I heard her tell one of her colleagues, she said, oh yeah, I know Fred Jordan, I'm his godmother. So I said, okay, I'll accept that. I haven't figured out how you do that though, but because she's the goddaughter of my son, but she's my godmother. So, but it works. So I got her on the phone and I said, what is Salesforce going to do? She says, I tell you what, Fred. She didn't say Fred, but she said, I tell you what, Fred. I'm going to fly into Atlanta and I'm going to have a block party. And we're going to have about 200 people. And in this block party, we're going to stream to every database of Salesforce, 5 million people. And we're going to say, this is Black Business Month. And I said, hey, just the awareness of that. She said, not only that, 2.2 million people signed on for the whole program of Black Business Month. Now that's what the corporation can do. And that's what we need. We need to make the awareness of Black business that we need to participate in this economy. And so we're just doing all kinds of things. But particularly in California and Illinois laughs at us. Boy, they say, oh, you guys, back in the old days, 1945 or something. But we're gonna change that. And I'm so happy to see everybody here today. We're gonna turn this around. And so I'd like to turn this over to our president, who was a hard-working president, and he led the thing, put all of this together. Let's give him a round of applause.
We're going to recognize our very special partners, UC Berkeley Extension, Associate Professor and Dean, who is with us, and his name is also Frederick. Frederick, could you please come up and give us a welcome to your great facility?
Thank you. Stand here as well to use the microphone. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Ajake. Thank you, your eminent leader, Frederick Jordan. It's really a privilege for me to share a name with such an important person. And it's a privilege for me to welcome you all here at our facilities. It's an interesting, collaboration that we have with the Chamber, and for us it's a real pleasure and privilege to be able to have this partnership, because we are a part of the university. If any one of you wondered what the extension means, that was founded by a few, I would say, renegade lecturers and faculty over 130 years ago, when the university was actually founded with the promise of being a land-grant university open to everybody. And of course, the reality is more that they started off as a small elite, little, almost an Ivy University of the West, on a hill in Berkeley, very much secluded, very much only for the small privileged groups that had access to that type of higher education. And the beauty of, I think, the West Coast, I'm from Europe, what I discover and love about California and the West Coast and North California is the fact that the people are not taking it. They're not just sitting back and like that's my European heritage is if the important, powerful people say it is so, then people are just like, okay, fine, I guess I can't do anything. It's been like this for millennia here. Important people say this is how it is, and people say, nope, I don't agree. And I'm not happy with this. And so this is what happened actually, only 15 years after the existence of the university, people said like, what is happening here? Like you're supposed to teach us all, you're supposed to do research for all of us, all the people, we're paying this university. And a few faculty really took up that call, went on a ferry and actually came to San Francisco, not this building, but similarly back in the day, building just rented space and started lecturing, and it was wildly successful. And it was widely successful in two ways. And this is really why I personally, as an educator, absolutely enjoy being with so many professionals and experts in the room. When you have a course, a class, an engagement between an academic, a professional who is teaching and has a classroom of people like you in front of them, you are not in the same situation as what you maybe remember from college or high school or school in general, where you just sit down and the faculty knows everything and just drops their wisdom on you. The faculty probably would wish that in some ways, but it's not what's happening. If I tell you this is how it is, in my case, a lecture marketing, this is how you do marketing, a professional will come back and say like, well, that doesn't work. Try it. Or here's my problem, here's how my reality looks like. And the magic of the classroom, the magic that was actually happening in these facilities here in San Francisco with our institution is really the fact that professionals like you are able to meet people that do research and work on innovation. And it's that feedback from the professionals, that engagement in the classroom that creates a magic that drives innovation, both at the university and in research and in industry. So funnily enough, the university has a 130-year-long history that parallels the economic development of California. Many UCs are actually founded by extensions, UC Irvine, UCLA, and so on. They're all grown out of extension campuses like this one. And so I really am absolutely excited and delighted that we can host experts and professionals in our facilities, because what you are able to share here with us, with each other, is really what makes, I would say, the Bay Area, San Francisco, and what makes Berkeley such a wonderful place. And there's nothing better for us than to have these professional relationships and to work with so many fascinating businesses that are really innovating and driving us all together forward. So with that, I don't want to extend a lot my talk, but I really want to extend my warm welcoming to everybody. Thanks to the Chamber for organizing all of it. Thank you to the teams that are hustling around behind the scenes and that make everything happen. And thank you all for attending, and particularly thanks to all the speakers that will share their wisdom with us. And I hope they will have a little bit of that magic that happens in these classrooms, where none of you will just sit still and take it. You will all give feedback and we'll have fascinating discussions, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
What he'll be talking about this afternoon with us is how the Chamber is partnering with UC Berkeley Extension. Some of the things that we're working on, we're preparing a curriculum that we're going to use to prepare our African American and women leaders to be part of corporate boards. We're working on a curriculum that will allow us to prepare our people to be on corporate boards. Based on California law now, you have to have at least one woman and one minority in corporate board, California corporate boards. So we want to make sure that when our people go there, they're successful. we're working on that curriculum. The school has been so gracious to the chamber that actually we're working on a scholarship program for our business owners so that you can take certificate courses and create that knowledge out of the need for your business. We recognize as a chamber that oftentimes our people start businesses based on need, but not so much based on training. And so we're trying to close that gap through our relationship with UC Berkeley Extension. It's a great honor that we have today the Executive Director of Human Rights Commission. This is a lady that I've admired from a distance because she's had and continues to put in programs and initiatives that are cutting edge, that look beyond ad hoc responses to problems and more systemic responses to the issues that we face, both as a people and as a nation. So it's a great pleasure that I introduce Dr. Charlotte Davis, Executive Director of the Human Rights Commission.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Okay. I first just want to thank the Chamber for this opportunity to share and speak a little bit. I'll be going back and forth between my glasses. I try to act like I can see, but really I can't. So y'all bear with me with the vanity of it all. It's interesting, I had a chance to talk to Frederick, not Fred, this morning, the judge of peace, justice of peace over here, just about the history and the context. And it was great to hear also the creation and the evolution of Black Business Month. And so I would say to everyone, happy Black Business Month. And maybe in that goal of raising awareness, we'd all be saying that to folks as we encounter them. But as he was talking and as I thought back, right, there is the history within San Francisco, just first and foremost to start with, for folks who remember the Unfinished Agenda, which was a report that chronicled 1964 to 1990 and looked at the parity or lack thereof for Black folks in San Francisco. Hundreds of pages, a document that outlined what needed to be done in terms of economics, in terms of workforce, in terms of education, health, and wellness. And then in 2009, which I know some of the folks were in here were part of, there was the Out-Migration Task Force that put out another report that again outlined what needed to be done with regards to education, economic development, workforce, entrepreneurial opportunities, criminal justice. And again, the report went forward, lots of recommendations, but there was no money, no funding, no allocation that was put towards that. Not until the national outcry, really, of George Floyd, do we see people starting to actually talk about putting money towards something. And as we look at the data, I see Brittany from the Human Rights Commission, she shared with me an article that did an analysis, that posted an analysis of all the folks that said that they were gonna put money towards Black folks, right, in response to what had happened nationally. So basically 50 corporations commit to nearly $50 billion worth of funding to support Black folks. Less than 1% of that funding actually went to grants. So about 4.9 billion went towards grants. The rest of it was, what'd you say, Brittany? Billion, yes. The rest of it, 50% of it went towards things that actually generated revenue for those companies, right? So loans, whether in the terms of loans for startups or businesses or home ownership. So we're looking at, they made a commitment of 49 point some odd billion, and then they made 500 and something billion, right? So when we start to talk about and think about how we're gonna move this work, how we're gonna advance it, I would just say here in San Francisco, the one good thing that I can say, and that I think is part of why I've been asked to come and share, is that Mayor Breed and president of the Board of Supervisors, Shaman Walton, actually did commit money. So from 1964 to 2009, there were reports, there were recommendations, there was a call for funding, but there was no funding. In 2020, after George Floyd, there was a commitment, there were pledges for funding. But really, what the analysis found is that the majority of the funding, even for the money that was put out in loans and grants, came from 2 banks, not 50. So again, when we talk about what people say versus what they do, we have to think about this accountability piece. And so one of the things that happened here locally is there was a commitment, and it wasn't just a pledge this time. There was an allocation of $60 million a year. First, it was just the $60 million, and then through the budget process, Mayor Breed and President Walton have annualized it. $60 million a year specifically for Black folks. There was a process that we went through in terms of the allocation, and I won't get to go through all of it today, but I will just say to folks, take a look at dreamkeepersf.org. So that is on the website, and I can get that to the chamber to be able to share out. But I wanted to say, as I move through kind of this place to get to where we can have a conversation and do some Q&A, I started my career as a teacher, so folks that have been around me know I typically always refer to some poem or song or something, because I taught kindergarten, so I really think very basic and plain when I think about things. And a poem that comes to me is some lines from Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And in it she says, the caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. And that resonates with me because for folks who have been through this process, who've gone through this, it is like the dreams are buried, right? Like they are in a grave, like I'm tired of talking about this. We keep saying it's gonna get better and it doesn't actually get better. Doesn't seem like even the money that is promised comes to us, and when the money does come to us, it doesn't have the impact that it wants. So I think about that line, the caged bird stands on the grave of dream. Let me just put my glasses on because I know it, but I wanna make sure I say it right. His shadow shouts, his nightmare screams. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. And so I do feel like the chamber has served in that role. Still willing to sing, even though the wings have been clipped and the feet have been tied, that there is some sense of hopelessness about like, why do we keep trying to fly? We're trapped in this cage that doesn't really allow that space. And then it goes on to say, the caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still. His tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. And so we know that freedom really is economics, right? Like it is the ability to live freely when you don't have to worry about paying your rent, when you don't have to worry about what you're gonna eat. And I think we take so much for granted, even when we talk about knowing what you're going to eat, right? Like the difference between, I may eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that's what I like, versus that's what I'm eating because that's all I can afford, right? So the choices that we make are all connected to that freedom to move freely. And so really want to appreciate and recognize the work of the chamber, because I think so often we are so narrowly focused on workforce opportunities as getting trained to work for someone else. And the challenge here is, especially when we talk about the great resignation that's happening across the country, if not the world, the challenge here is that maybe I want to work for myself. And that idea of like, how do we get to that? How do we invest in that? And why is it that there are different rules when we think about, we mentioned Salesforce, or you think about Google, or you think about Apple, that folks who were able to drop out of college and high school could have the capital and have the ability to think freely and to fail, that same opportunity is not applied or given to folks of color and even Black dreams, right? And when we talk about tech, the ability to talk about like who's actually buying the apps and who's actually using the apps and who people are making money off of versus who's creating the apps, who's actually in business to do that type of work. So those are some of the things that As we think about the Dreamkeeper initiative, as the Human Rights Commission thinks about the work that we're doing, where do we go from here, which is one of the questions. We have to move beyond pledges, right? This idea of who promises to do something. One of the things that came out in that article was that there were a lot of pledges made, but the accountability of who's gonna make sure that a corporation who is independent that makes a pledge, but they're not like, there's not a law that says that they have to follow through on the pledge that they made, or that the pledge has to do anything more than host affinity groups within their department. So they may make a pledge and they may only be benefiting the people that already work for them. So how do we move beyond pledges? How do we move to a place where we can hold folks accountable? What is that accountability system? And how do we, in the same way, because I would challenge that even we as a city, we fund a lot of workforce development, we fund a lot of training programs, but I don't know that we have the same investment for entrepreneurs. I don't think that we have the same kind of commitment for entrepreneurs. And so what does that look like to help people begin to develop their own small business? Both the reports, Unfinished Agenda as well as the Outmigration report, talked about purchasing from Black businesses, right? And it's not just about a quota or asking people to kind of try and do that. What's the intentionality? How do we actually build towards that? I think those are the things that we're wrestling with as we build off of the investments that the mayor and President Walton have made. And the thing that, Brittany in our office is always pushing for, what are the policy changes? So I will be honest with you all, I struggle with the city creating policies that then get put in some document and on a shelf. Because if we do not have strong partnerships with groups like the Chamber or our other partners in community or businesses themselves, doesn't matter what the policy says. Because if the policy doesn't work, or if nobody knows to take advantage of it, or if it costs more to implement than it does to write it, then it doesn't materialize. So I think we do need to do more around policy changes, but we have to make sure that the infrastructure to advance or implement the policies exists. So as we talk about how do we stabilize African American businesses as well as communities, these are the things that, and I'll say, it's great, I appreciate Brittany connecting with Nikki and with Dr. Ajike around being here today, because she's gonna be leading up what we're gonna be doing around inclusive economic rights, or our economic supports. And we're doing a lot of work with Derek Hamilton out of the New School, as well as other national thought leaders. And some of the things that we're hoping to build out in that process that we would love to be able to stay connected with you all is who has access to contracts, which I know this is something that Fred and the Chamber have been working on for a long time. So contracts go out, and yes, they may be open to everyone, but the rules and the stipulations and the timelines for that make it very difficult and challenging. And one of the things that we're really struggling with since we've launched the Dreamkeeper initiative is if we want to give a contract to someone, or if we want to even just do one random invoice that's less than $10,000, the challenges that that organization has to overcome in order to get the $9,500 is more than the $9,500. So really thinking about who has access to contracts, what that process is, and how we invest in that on the front end. Becoming a vendor, a supplier, getting the insurance, making sure that you understand that you have to have insurance, or that if you have more than X amount of employees, what you have to prove that you're doing, the 12B, the 12R, the 12, all of these different things really impact in a business, the ability to start a business, especially if you're doing it as your side hustle, as a startup, or until you can actually do it as a full-fledged business. The other piece is around capital. What are those investments that we make? Is this a good time for us to be buying up property, or helping people buy property, or helping people pay for long-term leases, to buy product and put into a warehouse and be able to do that, especially when we keep hearing about nationally, now that we're kind of coming out of this, and all these warehouses, or how Target and all these people have this surplus of items that they're selling for pennies on the dollar, that it would be great for folks to be able to buy, but if they don't have the funds to buy it, then we're not actually helping. Thank you. So funding startup, and I think the place where we get really lost is the stability of funding, the funding stability. So we pay people to get started, and then we're like, see you in 5 years, and they need you in 5 days.
Yes.
Right, like startup is one thing, stability is another. So that's another thing that we're really trying to work on, and that we're leveraging the Dreamkeeper dollars and some of the work that we're doing with reparations, or some of the work that we're doing within the guaranteed income space. And then the other one that I would really lift up for you all that I am interested in is the difference between corporate social responsibility versus corporate social responsiveness versus community responsiveness, right? Or community stakeholder or corporate stakeholder responsiveness. So there are these evolutions and these thoughts of it, and everyone likes to talk about their CSR and what they're doing and how they're being responsive to community. But generally that might mean that they do a day where they do a cleanup, or they give out backpacks, or they host folks for a lunch. That may or may not actually do the trick for really doing corporate social responsibility, which is why there's now this shift to be like community stakeholder responsibility. Who are the stakeholders? Who are you impacting? You talk about Salesforce, like who was displaced by that? Who doesn't have access to that building? Who are the folks that they should be accountable to? And that's part of that, because when you focus on corporate social responsibility, they're responsible to themselves. That's the argument, right? And so they're making up the decisions of how they want to move forward. I would also say, what does it look like to find allies? Which this is a great example of what's happening here today in terms of whose building we're in, who's in the space, how we're partnering, how we're working together. But that's really critical for the policy changes as well. The allies and the speaking in the voices. We know that we've had a challenge with getting Prop 209 overturned, and there was more momentum and traction last year through that ballot initiative because of allyship. I think what we've got to figure out is what that looks like moving forward. So as I try and wrap it up here, I would just say there's a lot that's happening within the Human Rights Commission. There's a lot that we're trying to do to build out that space, whether it's in terms of health. Some of the things that we want to do in health are think about what's culturally affirming, to think about how we move through those spaces, how we address the stigma around preterm birth, or the stigma around needing help, right? Like not falling into the pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and understanding that sometimes folks don't have boots, right? Like, so what does it look like to have that conversation in terms of health, to understand the stigma that has been within the health industry, where there's tons of data that talks about the pain of Black folks is not seen a lot of times when they go to the doctor's office, that it's underestimated in terms of what it is, so we're trying to do more around that. The employment piece is huge. We know that pre-pandemic and now even after the pandemic, that the unemployment rates are higher for Black folks in San Francisco than they are for other populations. It was the highest. San Francisco's unemployment rate was pre-pandemic at less than 6%, or right around 2%, and it was in the double digits for Black folks. So the employment piece is another challenge. We know education continues to be an ongoing challenge. Black students in San Francisco Unified make up less than 7% of the population, but still account for more than 30% of suspensions and expulsions. They still are hugely, it just doesn't make sense to me. I try to wrap my head around it as a former educator, to say we have 250 seniors in the school district, but less than 50% of them are gonna graduate. Like, that's such a manageable number. Why can't we? And I think that that is more about the will of the people than the skills of the young people. So there are still things that we're trying to do and work with in that regard, and investing tremendously there. And demographic stabilization, the ability to bring folks back to San Francisco is very connected to employment and housing. And it's very connected to whether, when we talk about guaranteed income, we're gonna give people money to come back. Because asking someone to choose between paying $4,000 a month for a 1-bedroom in San Francisco and $4,000 a month to pay for a whole house in another county, it's a huge deal. right? It's a lot when you're trying to raise your children, and I will end with and leave with this. I think there is a sense for Black folks, not just Black businesses, that they feel invisible, right? They feel unappreciated, invisible, or that when they walk down the street, that folks maybe are gonna grab their bag or look at them and be worried about their safety. And so people who are raising their children or living their lives also have to make a decision about if they feel welcome here. And part of this conversation around stabilization, part of this conversation about doing business is about how do we make this not just a welcoming space, but a culturally affirming space, where it's okay to be Black, right? Where it's okay to like own that and not be ashamed and not have to hide what you're selling behind something else because you're afraid that people may not come to you. I don't know how many folks are familiar with the study that was done around resumes, where they sent out resumes and put Rashad versus Richard, or Jessica versus Jasminica, and and everything on them was the same, except for the name. And the names that seemed to have more African American names did not get a return call, did not get invited to the interview, did not get engaged, and the more traditional names did. So I say that as an indication of the challenge of doing business, the challenge of just being, is real. It has been documented. And that as we talk about doing businesses, there's a sense of how do we create culturally affirming places and spaces for businesses and for people to be, and that's part of what we're hoping to do through this work, is to say that it's not just about the bottom line, it's not just about the dollar, it's about the people, and that learning has to be done on both sides, but we also have to make it okay to be a Black business in San Francisco. So, thank you.
Everything you just hit on is exactly what the Chamber is reimagining as an organization as to how we support our Black businesses. Because we believe that to every single African American business owner that is struggling in 6 areas that we've identified, they're not fully focused on their business. One is contracting and employment, housing, healthcare, socio-economic stabilization, demographic stabilization, and we felt like an education. So when we put that out, our good partners from UC Berkeley came and said, we can do all the others, but we may be able to do some of them. For education, we're going to stick our head on that one. And then we got some banks that came to us and said, hey, the socio-economic, what do you mean by that? We're saying that if one business succeeds and the others are struggling, socio-economically, we're not successful. So we have to create an environment, exactly what you're talking about, that incubates and supports all businesses within our community. So I've got two quick questions for you. I'll open up to the floor. First is, I love the idea of finding allies and working with allies. And I love the idea that you went back to reports that had recommendations, but were never really implemented, and what you and the city is doing right now to enforce that. So first question is, in light of the information that you have about the social responsibility, sustainable development goals of most corporations, how is the city aligning its priorities as part of meeting those needs and telling the story of why those needs need to be met? How are you also including using it to build African American businesses in the city?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of, we're in the beginning stages of that, and want to make sure that Brittany is able to stay connected to Nikki so we can follow up with you all on some of that. One of the things that we have coming up, October 6th and 7th in San Francisco, is really focused on some of that, right? Like starting with the grassroots level, but also engaging our policymakers and working with corporate entities. So October 6th will be at LinkedIn, and we're still figuring out what some of that programming is gonna look like on the 6th and 7th, but it really is about, where are the gaps? And how can we connect the dots on the gaps? So for instance, we'll be at LinkedIn, we've reached out to the port to host some things, so we're working with the port to do pop-ups at the port. We've done the last 2 years, during Juneteenth, we've had vendors at the port, in June. And what we found is that those vendors, the hoops to be able to access the port were so challenging and so difficult. They worked with a partner organization who did it, but they made so much money compared to how much they make on other pop-ups in that one day at the port, at the ferry building. It was like, we need to do more of that. So now we're working with the port to say, what does it look like to get to quarterly, then monthly, and then more often, and then also to start moving people into those spaces. And so that has required this bringing folks together, understanding what it looks like, but it's not just about accessing the space on that day. It's about the marketing, right? It's about how do you create a following. There's the roti chicken folks. I don't know if people have seen that. Like if you're there at the ferry building on Saturday, like that line is a block long all day long. Same thing for the bagel place, same thing for the coffee place. And so even if you just get a fraction of those folks, but understanding how they get people out, how they are able to have a following, like all of that has to be taught. And corporations have marketing and communications, they have a whole division often that's bigger than most of these small businesses. So how do we leverage that? Those are the things that we're gonna brainstorm. And we're working with a couple of folks. One is, if folks are familiar, Pinky Cole, who is the CEO, founder of Slutty Vegan, and has launched these vegan franchises, is kind of gonna be the Chick-fil-A of vegan food. She'll be with us on October 7th. And so talking to her, as well as another woman from Atlanta, Lakeisha Hallman, who helped curate the events for Essence Festival. So trying to talk to these people who are leading this work nationally to help us understand and to connect with other folks that are doing it. And LinkedIn, for those who don't, like, they have a marketing platform. Google has a Google AdWords. There are all these things that we can leverage.
So we'll take 2 questions from the floor for the director. So I saw your hand and then we'll go with it. So go ahead, over to you.
Dr. Davis, I'm so happy. I really enjoy your presentation. You are the best of the best. You came out with several ideas today. When I moved to San Francisco in 1974, I said, where are all the African Americans who were OMI, Western Addition, or Bayview? Which is fine. Then suddenly, we keep migrating out. Then when I moved to Bayview, 65% of African Americans are homeowners. Today, they've gone down to 40. They are migrating out. What can we do to bring them back? I know you talk about economics, you talk about housing. What kind of encouragement can you give us that can bring the African American back to San Francisco? I know it's kind of broad, but give us some wisdom that you always talk about.
So I'll try and be brief. Part of the Dreamkeeper initiative took $10 million to help with down payment assistance. And I've got to memorize and learn the numbers, but I would say last year alone, they had more people go through and receive funding for the down payment assistance, Black people, than they have in the last 10 years. Right, so that closed escrow that went through the process, and part of that was, it's $500,000 down payment, which is not something that we've had before. We're still working on how it can be forgiven and that it doesn't have to be paid back. Right now, the paying back doesn't really begin for a very long time anyway, but though we have to do more of those type of things. We have to be more innovative. We have to think about the pipeline. We also have been trying to think about, can we do a database of people, Black-owned homes already, and really working with them so that when they get ready to sell, that we go through this kind of process to make sure that it gets sold to another Black person, or that we start to think in a way where we're like, what's open and can we do can we buy? Can we create, I know that there was Tabernacle Group and others, but we need to create some additional groups to buy homes and then work with putting black folks into them. That's the quicker answer.
That's a great one. And,
Thank you.
Linda, you had a question?
Good morning,
Good
Dr.
morning.
Davis. Thank you so much for all of your work, I mean, the whole body of your work. And I did wanna follow up on just black businesses, and so, you know, I'd love to be able to support our black businesses, and one thing I struggle with is knowing where they are and who they are. And I was wondering if you'd wanna collaborate with us on creating a robust directory of black-owned businesses, starting in San Francisco and in the greater Bay Area. And I think we could bring in our friends at Google who have smart engineers who can do this, and, you know, I think we could get this done. So just wanna make a direct ask that we can collaborate.
That's an excellent idea, and Brittany is,
Yeah, we've
Ready.
already actually started conversations with SF Travel, because to Director Davis's point around visibility and marketing and just a support getting 50 to 100,000 visitors, you know, tourists a day, and how black businesses have access to that type of, you know, built-in system. We've already started conversations with SF Travel to build out black directories, much like they have in other major cities, where when you're coming to San Francisco, you know where to go, you know who to visit, both our cultural centers and our food businesses and whatever else, just kind of highlighting those black businesses.
Yeah, so I just wanna follow up on that, because I think it's really important, to Matthew's point, is to collaborate and make sure that we're all doing this, because I didn't know any of that. I know you have a directory out there, I've looked at it on the HRC site. But I think that if we can collaborate together with the chamber in particular, and we can just, you know, make sure that we're embracing all the potential partners, including public and private partnership, that's what my request
yeah,
is.
we are in the process right now. We're finishing up hiring, and we're hoping to have a, you may remember the Curl Fellow that we had before, that was on some of the community meetings. He has finished his fellowship, and we're hoping to have him work specifically on that. So, once we have the point of contact, we will make that connection.
Great. And just for plugging, Linda is one of our new board members. She's already shared with you what our priorities are gonna be as our board members, so we're here.
And just, so you know, I've been rebranded LPP.
For those who are familiar.
LPP, yes, that's LPP. One last question from you, quick, if it's quick. I know Director has to leave.
Hi, my name is Mark Suber. I just wondered if you could speak to that housing issue which you just mentioned about the grants, because I did meet a representative from Simone's office at Juneteenth, and they were talking about the 20 slots and that sort of thing. How are you all getting the word out? Because I just happened to find out because I was out there. I had never heard about it. So how's the word getting out, or how can I get the word out and get me the word, we can get it out so more people can become involved in that and take advantage of that? That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we can connect you. The money sits with the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, so MOCD. It's not necessarily 20 slots, it's $10 million. The first year was 20 million, and I will tell you, they didn't exhaust that, so it will roll over. And it literally is, they've come to us, we've done some outreach and engagement. It's called the Dreamkeeper Initiative Down Payment Assistance Loan Program. But we can get that information to the chamber and to other folks, because we wanna have it flooded, and I think that's a good way for in-migration, for folks who've been pushed out to be able to come back, as well as to hold on to the folks who are here. So I will just, my last thing, I was looking at something this morning. I would say the last thing is around a James Baldwin quote, which talks about basically becoming a threat, is what I took from it. He was saying, when you are the victim, and once the victim begins to understand the harm and begins to develop strategies to address the harm, you become a threat. So I really would say, let's move from being the victims to being a threat, so that, because I do think I do think Frederick has done that well, because I do think when he walks in a room, people are like, oh my goodness. So you want people to kind of be like, I'm getting ready to be challenged, I'm getting ready to get some pushback, I'm getting ready to have to rethink the way that I've been working, because it's not status quo anymore. So I would say, I keep saying to folks, while black is trending, folks need to move on it, because it's not gonna trend for very much longer.
There it is.
So,
That's it.
there you go.
quick here, Danetta, how much time do you have with us? You have to leave soon?
By noon.
Okay, good. So we can take the transportation, Secretary Frederick. You wanna go to Danetta now, or we do the?
Coach was the next on the item, but I can go, you go now.
Yeah, so we can introduce, yeah, okay. And then we'll do this, the keynote speaker, is our State Transportation Secretary. He happened to have flown to, Detroit this morning, and so he sent his message that we're gonna play for you. And then after that, we're gonna take questions that we're gonna send to him, and he will respond to us, and we'll pass it back to you all.
I had asked the president to let me introduce this next speaker, Danetta Jackson. And I did that because I've known her and I've been in the trenches with her for the past several years as we've tried to open up GSA, I think it's GSA, and to open up government operations, because we did have a very illustrious leader named Yolanda Richardson, and she was dynamic. She has moved forward now, but the chamber has been on a panel, on a state-appointed council to make things happen with government services, GSA, and this other part. You know, we concentrate on Caltrans and all of that good, but there is another agency that is so powerful and has a tremendous budget. And Danetta has been there on the forefront, and she is like the person to go to. And I'm just so pleased that she found the time to come down and talk to us and give us some leadership advice. Ladies and gentlemen, Danetta Jackson.
Thank you, Fred. Good to see you. So good morning, everyone.
Good
morning. I just want to first thank Fred for the invitation and Nikki for assisting me with getting here. I was going in circles. I'm telling you, I live in Sacramento. So when she gave me the directions to the parking lot, it just the navigation kept taking me around in circles, seriously. So I finally had to call her. But anyway, I'm good. I'm glad to be here now, and I just wanted to say good morning to you all. As Fred mentioned, I'm Danetta Jackson, and I'm honored to be here. I'm the new statewide Supplier Diversity Program Manager. It's in the California Department of Justice. So to correct Fred, it isn't GSA, that's federal government. I'm with the state California Department of General Services. So people do mix those up a lot. So also known as DGS. So you will hear GSA for federal, DGS for state. So my new position is, it's an executive position committed to implementing policy strategies aimed at improving equity and achieving greater diversity in the state's supplier base. So my position is an integral part of the state's priority to increase diversity and equity in state contracting. So a large part of my role, I heard Cheryl mention collaboration. Collaboration is key. Collaborating with programs within DGS, collaborating with external state departments, as well as vendor stakeholders, diverse community-based organizations. So that is key to the success of what I'm trying to do. Again, I'm honored to be here, to collaborate with all of you, and to speak on the topic of socioeconomic stabilization through statewide procurement and supplier diversity. That's a big one. Socioeconomic stabilization through statewide procurement and supplier diversity. So First of all, I wanna applaud all of you for being here because I have a lot of information to share with you. So keep your ears open. First of all, DGS is the business manager for the state of California and helps California state government better serve the public by providing a variety of services to state agencies through innovative procurement and acquisition solutions, creative real estate management and design, environmentally friendly transportation, funding for the construction of safe schools, and promoting California small, diverse, and disabled veteran businesses. So we all know over the past few years, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a large impact on all businesses throughout the nation. In particular, we know African-American owned businesses. The census current population survey illustrates that minority-owned businesses have been disproportionately affected. The number of active businesses owned by African Americans dropped by 41% in 2020. So that's a pretty significant number, 41%. So aligning with the direction of the administration, as Fred Jordan mentioned, the California State Legislature, other departments, and small business stakeholders, DGS has recognized this issue and has worked alongside with our government operations agency over the past few years in support of expanding and diversifying the pool of minority-owned small businesses doing business with the state. So we recognize that by supporting minority-owned small businesses with certification, outreach, direct assistance, and education, we can help them access state contracting opportunities. It's a must. We have to dedicate more resources to the efforts. Because the opportunities, we just have to do our part. That's just it. We have to do our part in order to allow these businesses, and all of you as well, to economically recover from everything that's historically been happening throughout our nation. So I want to share with you a little bit about what the DGS Office of Small Business, their role is. So the DGS Office of Small Business and Disabled Veteran Business Enterprise Services, known as OSDS, has certification and outreach teams that partner with me as well as other departments to provide training and support to help small and diverse businesses get certified, learn about doing business with the state, market to and connect with potential prime contractors and state department buyers. The state spends $10 to $12 billion each year in contract awards. That's a lot. And we have a goal of spending 25% of those dollars with state certified small businesses and 3% with disabled veteran business enterprises, known as DVBEs. So think about that. The state can be a force for equity, economic recovery, and innovation, as well as an attractive business partner. DGS recently identified that over the past 4 years, approximately 90% of the state's contracts reported in the state's financial information system, representing more than $100 billion in expenditures, have gone to California-based businesses, supporting the local business community and helping to keep Californians employed. So I'll just give you a little bit of data. So for fiscal year 2021, the state awarded over $23.67 billion, the highest in the history of reporting, with over $3.4 billion or 14.47% in small business participation and $636 million, that's 2.69% in DVBE participation. That's a lot of money, a lot of money.
Say that one again.
I'll say that again. In this past fiscal year, 2021, the state awarded over $23.67 billion.
Damn.
The highest in the history. Okay? Over 3.4 billion went to small businesses and 636 million went to DVBEs. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the emergency procurement dollars, because California is known for emergencies. Not just the COVID pandemic, but California wildfires. Emergency procurement dollars represented 61.5% in total awarded dollars for the year compared to 38.8 in 2019-20. That's significant. So the emergency procurement surged to 13.05 billion, an increase of $8.41 billion, or 181%. So emergencies have really just taken over, big. So, but I will say that small businesses and micro businesses were awarded 3.10 billion, the highest amount in the program's recorded history, up from the prior year's 2.84 billion. Micros received the larger share of the small business dollars at 1.79 billion, that's 58%. So this was more than the prior year's 1.51 billion by almost 18%. So I share this information to, so that you can kind of open up your eyes on the opportunities. As you can see, state contracting opportunities are immense. But in order to take advantage of these opportunities, you must be a state certified small business. A state certified small business. So let's talk briefly about our state certification. First of all, I'd like to, by show of hands, how many of you are already certified with the state? Okay, just a handful. And can you two tell me how long you've been certified?
Since 2000.
Since 2000, that's a long time. What about you?
2000.
What about you,
I
Fred?
was still in school in 2000.
School with Noah.
Probably about the same time.
Okay. So currently, we have nearly 16,000 certified small businesses and 1,600 disabled veteran business enterprises, DVBEs, in our Cal eProcure database. But we would like to see more minority-owned businesses. Some of the benefits for being a certified small business with the state include eligibility to be part of the state's 25% small business goal. That's one. Small businesses are eligible for a 5% bid preference on applicable state solicitations. You can access contract opportunities exclusively available to certified businesses through our small business DVBE option procurement method, which allows state agencies to contract directly with a certified business for contracts valued from $5,000 up to $250,000 and up to $388,000 for public works contracts by getting 2 quotes, but you have to be in the database, okay? You can also leverage your certification with other California government entities known as state reciprocity partners. DGS's reciprocity program with local governments, municipalities, transit districts, school districts, and utility companies allows you to be recognized as a small business and or DVB without having to recertify with each entity. So I'll explain what that means. We have more than 40 reciprocity partners and our list continues to grow. That means you can maximize your small business certification with those entities. Some of our partners in the Bay Area include BART, Contra Costa County, Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, Santa Clara Valley Water District, San Francisco City College, and the City and County of San Francisco, There's many, many more, and East Bay Municipal Utility District. So, noteworthy to our reciprocity partnership is we recently entered, this new partnership with the UC Regents. So all 9 university UCs are now reciprocity partners with the state. UC Berkeley, UC San Francisco, UC Santa Cruz, and all the rest of the UCs. And as a result of this partnership, $5 billion annually have been added to the opportunities for small businesses and DVBEs outside of the state procurement, furthering our objectives of supporting California small businesses. So where do you start? Who can tell me, where do you start in order to get access to all of these contracting opportunities? Where do you start?
Get certified.
Get certified. Who else has an answer?
Go to eProcure and look at the advertisements.
Yes, so you go to caliprocure.ca.gov, www.caliprocure.ca.gov. That's the very first step, a one-step entry point. It is an online portal for registration, certification, and accessing state contracting opportunities.
Like 3 more times, slow.
CalEProcure, don't worry about this, I'll give you my business card. CalEProcure.ca.gov. And it's free. It's all free to you. So if you aren't certified, which many of you did not raise your hand, I strongly encourage you to get certified. Once you are certified, you will have access to these state contracting opportunities, including those exclusively available to certified businesses. So in order for the state to diversify our supplier base, we really need to ensure more minority businesses register. I mean, it's really up to you. You have to take that first step. Once you take that first step, we can support you. We can support you by making sure your profile is robust. We can connect you to state departments. And I'll share a little bit about that later. But as a business strategy, supplier diversity can lead to economic resiliency for all communities and stimulate the economy. So I just wanted to touch on briefly some of the highlights and strategies DGS has employed in 2021 to support diversity and inclusiveness in state contracting. So we all know emergencies in California have shown us the importance of having an abundance of businesses ready and prepared for emergency contracting. So to increase opportunities for small businesses to participate in emergency procurements, we launched an online emergency registry. So this registry allows certified small businesses and DVBE firms to provide information on their specific capacity to support the state in the wake of an emergency. So this tool allows buyers to identify available small businesses and DVB firms to connect with for contracting opportunities. We have a list of maybe about 40 categories: debris removal. There's just a number of categories for emergencies. Janitorial services is also included. I met a lady, I'll share a little bit of a success story. We have a janitorial business, minority and women-owned business. She was called to respond to an emergency at one of the state prisons. COVID broke out. They needed a thorough cleaning of the entire prison. She took on that job and she won that contract because it was an emergency. She was a certified business. They reached out to her, and now I can't even tell you how many contracts this lady has received. Her friend can probably tell you
Over 20
more than that.
throughout the state.
If you look in our Skippers database and bring up her name, it's almost as if she has taken over all the contracts for the state. And janitorial, that's a business it's needed across the board. Everybody needs janitorial.
That's right.
But she has made her business, now she's like making billions.
Oh, dang.
And she's getting some big contracts. So that's just a quick success story. I actually highlight her on my website as a success story. And you know, many people say, oh, well, why are you highlighting the janitorial business? Is, you know, because that's something, you know, we know a lot of minority businesses take on. But this lady was smart. I'm just telling you, she made this a robust business. And she moved, I'm just telling you, she moved from Elk Grove. I live in Sacramento. I don't know if you're familiar with Elk Grove. She moved from Elk Grove to El Dorado Hills. So I'm just sharing, contracting opportunities with the state can really sustain your livelihood. So getting back to this, we believe the use of our emergency registry will allow the state to increase the diversity of businesses used during emergency operations, but mostly provide an opportunity for more businesses to experience working with the state. Because you need some experience, understanding the contracting process, and it will allow, you know, more businesses to increase their knowledge, their ability to compete on future procurements. So, and to date, I'm proud to say that we have more than $43.5 million in emergency procurements have been awarded to businesses in the registry. And that's pretty good. This is a project we just launched, and it's exclusive to small businesses. So I encourage you, get certified. Also, to understand our outreach effectiveness in underserved, disadvantaged communities, we developed and launched the California Small Business DVBE Atlas tool, known as CalSat. So CalSat, what it is a visual, interactive tool that overlays our small businesses and disabled veteran business enterprises geographic information. It's GIS locations, procurement dollars, procurement purchase orders, and on disadvantaged communities. So it's using a Cal EnviroScreen map that was developed by our California Environmental Protection Agency. So what Cal EnviroScreen does is it uses socioeconomic factors such as high poverty, high unemployment, linguistic isolation, severe housing burden, low educational attainment, along with environmental and health factors in determining if a community is disadvantaged. And this tool is really ideal to integrate with our certification and outreach program. Given limitations due to Proposition 209, while it does not explicitly include race and ethnicity indicators, it comes with a complementary race, ethnicity, age analysis, concluding that disadvantaged communities are most likely to be predominantly people of color. So CalSat will help locate certified firms in disadvantaged communities receiving disproportionately fewer purchase orders compared to firms in non-disadvantaged communities. And it will serve as a resource to inform strategies that can be employed by the state towards its diversity procurement objectives. So that's just a little bit about that tool. We also launched a new voluntary supplier diversity data collection. As we know, Proposition 209 prevents us from having, I would say, goals for minority and women-owned businesses. And we don't really know the demographics of the small businesses in our database. We just don't. Everybody registers, we don't know who's who. We don't know who's Hispanic, African American, women-owned. But now, we're offering this voluntary data collection where businesses can actually go and when they register, they fill that information in. And the purpose of this data collection is to allow the state to gain a better understanding of registered and certified business owners' demographics related to ethnicity, race, gender identity, and sexual orientation. So this is something we are strongly advising everyone, if you register, please fill out that diversity data information, because as data becomes more robust, this information will be used to determine where outreach and support are needed among various communities to support greater diversity in state contracting. So to date, we have just over 2,000 certified businesses that have entered their diversity data. And we just launched it, so it's gonna take a couple years to actually get robust data, but it really, we are off to a good start there. And the last really piece I would like to talk to you about is Assembly Bill 1574. This piece of legislation became effective January of 2022, and it requires each awarding department to make continuous efforts to expand their pool of small businesses and micro businesses participating in state contracts by regularly seeking out and identifying certified firms that have not previously done business with the state or that are not regularly used in state contracting. Assembly Bill 1574. So right now, DGS is in the process of implementing a new statewide policy for Assembly Bill 1574. This policy will apply to all state contracts, all. This means all acquisition types. We have various acquisition types, so this policy will apply to all. And it will also include reminders to use existing provisions that we currently have in statute. Some of the things will be like establish contract small business participation goals to ensure the maximum amount of SB participation is achieved. Provide SB preference or non-small business preference for bidders that acquire SB and micro subcontractor participation in the award of contracts. We're also asking state departments to give special consideration to small businesses and micro businesses on state procurements whenever feasible by reducing the experience, reference requirements, and the level of inventory usually required. For example, include accepting subcontracting experience and or other State Department references or local government references. Because sometimes the references can be a deterrent in doing business with the state. Whenever feasible, we're asking departments to divide major contracts or projects into smaller contracts to allow small and micro businesses to qualify to bid by unbundling these contracts. An example would be removing the electrical work from the rest of a public works project. That would be unbundling. Other strategies may include advertising the small business DVD option. Those procurements don't have to be advertised currently, but now we are asking departments to advertise those and select a contractor based on best value when feasible, not necessarily by price. So there's many strategies we are employing, and so it's just exciting because there are so many opportunities, and I would hate for any of you to miss out because you didn't get certified. That's your first step. And I just want to end by sharing that the state is really taking a closer look at how we do business by making our procurement policies and processes simpler, faster, more user-friendly for buyers and businesses. How many of you are in IT, the IT business? Anybody? Okay. Cause we just revamped one of our IT master services agreement, and, it reflects, believe we have like 330 contractors on that master service agreement, and more than half are small businesses, about 162. So that's basically more than half. So, I want to strongly recommend that you review, stay up to date, and support any proposed legislation that's impacting small and disadvantaged businesses. Don't say you heard it from me, but specifically Assembly Bill 2019. Keep that on your radars. It's small business enterprises, and if this bill passes, it will codify the 25% small business goal, and it also includes a requirement for a statewide procurement and contracting disparity study. So, let's, if it passes, so, those of you who, I don't know, lobby, go ahead, support that bill, because that's an important piece of legislation. Because the state, to my knowledge, has never conducted a state contract and disparity study. Do you know, Fred?
Well, if I could make a comment, the small business goal in this state is an executive order.
It's executive order, correct?
Executive order.
Mhm.
And this would codify that.
Yes, and
But
put
it's
it,
been up and down, and I wanna take this opportunity to say that this chamber, along with the Asian Chamber, and its president at the time is Eddie. Huh?
Eddie?
Yeah, Eddie Lau over here was president, and, Timothy Simon, which most of us know, wrote that as the Secretary of, California, when he was the secretary under Schwarzenegger. And that's where that came from. And we were looking to find a way for DBEs, but everybody else has benefited, but African American firms have not really benefited. But I do wanna acknowledge Eddie Lau, the team with the chamber here and the Latin Business Association, and wrote that small business executive order. And so when you said we wanna codify that was magic for me. You just made my day.
Let's just hope that it passes.
So we're gonna take some questions.
So,
So, right.
I just wanna wrap this up, cause I think this part is important. So, we in state government will continue to do our part to focus on increasing small business participation in state contracting, improving equity, and achieving diversity in the state supplier base. We were recently approved for funding to conduct an economic study on contracting with small businesses and DBEs, and funding to establish 2 new programs with 10 positions to support our efforts to develop a technical assistance training program specifically for certified businesses, as well as positions allocated towards improving the state's advocacy program. And that's big. So funding for advocate support will allow DGS to assist struggling departments to a greater extent in any given year, and provide support for the diversification of the pool of vendors statewide to comply with this recent legislation. So we will be seeking assistance to diversify the pool of applicants that apply for these positions, so we can continue to build trust in helping those with a diverse small business communities thrive. So we may be reaching out to some of our constituents for recommendations, because we definitely want a diverse pool, because I think that has been one of the pitfalls. Those who have been around the state for a while, you don't see many buyers that look like me, or many purchasing and contracting officials or purchasing authority contacts. So we're getting ready to change that landscape. So I want to thank you for your time, and I hope that this summit serves your needs. So feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Yeah.
I do have business cards, I will
We'll just do
share.
questions. Real quick here, let me brag on her a little bit, she doesn't know this, but I've been following her work, going back to, California, you know, with the GC system, right, as a supply diversity
I'm on the council.
council, okay. So this is not something new, she's been doing this work and really helping small businesses. She's a strong advocate, she knows what she's talking about, you know, she's on the Small Business Council and I hear her presentations, and this is our strong advocate. Okay, some people talk, she does. And, quick questions, let me see, I'll go to the back and then I'll start from there, how's that? Go ahead. Direct.
You gave out a lot of very, very valuable information, but it looks like you saved the most valuable to the end here regarding support of that bill. And so, I have other questions, but this is the only question that I want you to answer, and that is, how can we ensure that we mobilize our efforts to support this, because you know it's going to be attacked by moneyed interests that are gonna have lots of resources to be able to synchronize their message and make it look like it's something against mom and apple pie in America. So we have to start, and should have already started, trying to build an infrastructure of like-minded folks who are going to get the message out before they put their message out, because we'll always be in a reaction mode if we wait till that happens. And I think that it's very, very important that we kind of figure out the framework of how to go after that.
Okay, well, what I can do, there are supporters, I know some of the chambers are already strongly behind this bill, and it has been sort of back and forth. DGS recently had to provide some amendments to some of the language, because the bill was actually a little bit confusing, because it referenced disadvantaged business enterprise participation, and we're a state program. So that's a federal program. So we offered some amendments to the legislation, and the bottom line is collaboration. Get behind, your diverse strategic partners, councils. A lot of councils are already on board with supporting this bill and have provided their letters of support. So that's what I recommend. The state, we can't personally advocate on any piece of legislation. I'm just putting it out there. So we can talk a little bit more offline, and I can share some information with you offline. Please.
You mentioned the certification process to
Mhm.
get certified. What is the requirements to get certified?
Okay, so you have to be a California-based business. You have to be dominant in California. You can't be domiciled in California. I mean, you can't be dominant in your business. You must be a business with 100 or fewer employees. Your gross annual receipts can't exceed 15 million over 3 tax periods. So likely, I will say 80 to 90% of our small businesses are actually micro businesses. So with 25 or fewer employees, and the gross annual receipts are quite a bit less than 15 million. So yes.
Thank you.
You got a question?
Thank you. We're a micro lender, and I got a bunch of questions for you. And San Francisco is one of the counties we serve. And so, I really wanna be able to get a lot of the businesses that come to us this information. And this may be a Doug question, but are there any particular businesses, that can be certified, if that makes sense? Are you looking for any particular businesses? Would there be a micro business that wouldn't qualify, essentially?
Okay, well, I will say the state purchases just about everything, goods, services, IT goods and services, public works. The categories range, because we have 200 plus state departments who need the services, all have different needs. So likely, the business would qualify, but my recommendation is, there's a way you can check our procurement history. We have dashboards to see exactly what the state is buying, and I can share that information with you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So we got two questions from here. Go ahead.
My name is Eddie Lau. I sit on the Caltrans Council with Frederick Jordan since the 80s, and more recently, last 10 years, with Dr. Ashake. I want to make a comment on the codified 25% small business goal. I think, I'm supporting it, but I think we need to look at it carefully, because we have to have them amended to include goals for micro business. Because otherwise, micro business is gonna go down the drain. You keep in mind, for the public works project, small business threshold is $36 million versus micro business $5 million. If we codify 25% not taking care of micro business, we are going down the drain. So I think, sure, we wanna support codified small business, but we have to tag on a goal for micro business.
Yes.
Right now, from the DGS certification base, 80% of the small business are classified as micro business. So we should have somewhere around 75 to 80% participation. Right now, for the last year, I think you mentioned about 50% has gone to micro business. I think the micro business has a population of 80%. So I think micro business should be more represented in the participation. Otherwise, we're gonna give out everything to the big firms. Thank you for your time.
Yes, I suggest read the legislation thoroughly. Read it thoroughly, because I know there was talk about including a set aside for micro businesses in the legislation.
Okay, one last question. Go ahead.
Yeah, quick comment. Are you the new state equity officer? Is that who?
No, the new state equity officer in the Government Operations Agency was just appointed. I don't know her
Yeah,
name.
I don't know. But
I
anyway,
have not
know.
met her yet, but
I heard about something back
Yes.
in Illinois.
They did finally bring her on.
But one thing about the small business part, Eddie, is the fact that 60% of your contracts go on emergency contracts. And we have to remember, when it's an emergency contract, the buyer picks up the phone and calls somebody, period. And so what we need, I think, on your part and your team, is to tell those buyers that they need to be diverse. In some kind of way, evaluate that and maybe tie it to their paycheck or their promotion. Yeah. Because the buyers call their friends, and they don't call people that look like us.
That's true.
That's why we're changing
There you go.
that. Yes.
Thanks. I know
Thank
somebody
you.
had their hand up here. Yeah, Linda, go ahead. LPP?
Yes, thank you, it was really excellent information, Ms. Jackson, and I wanted to actually make a comment, because you asked everyone who is in the IT business, and I didn't see a single hand go up. So I have to comment, because, I worked in Silicon Valley most of my career, and I still work with technology companies as a service provider, doing leadership development and coaching and strategic alignment and stuff like that. So I think actually everybody is in the technology business, and I think that if we don't see ourselves that way, we will miss those opportunities, because a lot of stuff goes to technology and technology aligned businesses. So we just need to, so I'm just saying, being more technology savvy in terms of how you run your business and how you provide services to technology companies. That makes you in the IT business. So I just wanna help reframe our thinking about that, and it won't be the last time I'll be talking about this with y'all.
Thank you.
That was excellent, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So she's gonna give us some business cards. And, yes, go ahead, Eddie.
Ms. Jackson,
Yes.
can you explain what the CMAS certification is?
Okay, CMAS isn't necessarily a certification. It's piggybacking off of the General Services Administration schedule. So it's sort of like the old phone books. If you can apply to be a CMAS vendor and get on a list, and you'll be on a list with other suppliers, and it's available for state and local government agencies to use that list. And there is a requirement for departments to get at least, I believe it's at least 3 quotes before they can actually pull a vendor from that list. So it's just kind of another avenue for doing business with the state. And there is an application process involved with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, you take some cards.
What I'll do is I'll leave these and you can just, once they're gone, just, you can pass on mine.
Pass them, I will give them your number too. We live here and we have all of your information.
We don't have emails.
Okay, so we'll get your emails and phone
Oh,
number,
yeah.
and then we would have all the information about speakers. And,
Thank you.
Is this, you get orders from?
Do you have one more?
So we kind of juggling with time here, and I know we're running a little bit late. But this is a good time for us to bring up our SFO. You guys ready? We're just kind of switching our time here. Yeah, you guys. So we have our good folks from San Francisco International Airport, and they're going to be presenting the opportunities and stuff, a lot of stuff that they want us to have. Yeah, if you want to come take your parts, maybe we should take 5 minutes. How's that? Let's do 5. Let's do 5 and give airport folks time to. Janetta's cards are very, very valuable. Ladies and gentlemen, we're taking a 5-minute break. We'll be back at 11 o'clock. We're back. It's 11 o'clock right now. We're back at 11:05. Please come back to the meeting room so we can. All right. Yeah. Take the.
Yes, we're all part of the same plan.
I help you with
finances are before they come to you to look at what that looks like. Right, yes. So it's just so important, especially in our community, to make sure that it's done and it's done right. And that's what I'm right. Oh my God, this is so good because we can't do better unless we know what to do. Do you have a card? Yes, ma'am. Is this it?
Can you do one more?
What's available, how to present ourselves, how to ask questions. I think that's what the biggest thing. What's available. Right. Brings a huge wall where nothing happens because we don't understand. Right. The other side of that, it may take you a little bit. Maybe don't. What is your vision work? You got them now? Let's go. You know what I mean? Right. I just small.
We're gonna jump with the smell of money though.
Oh, really?
Something worse than investment.
Right.
I can't wait to find out.
That's some valuable information.
My rate is not that high.
Connection going. I might go into business. Yeah.
We meet with them. We meet every Monday.
Yeah.
So
might go into the.
this woman came to me.
That means
Right.
everything else. It doesn't matter.
Sure. Going to or coming from? Oh, yeah.
That's right. I got her card.
There's no money for that.
They're only asking for more.
Look this way. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2. Now hold it, raise your hand.
Simple question. Send me an answer.
Thank you for that. You know, we all need more.
All right.
Oh, really?
Thank you. Enjoyed your remarks. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the collaboration.
Okay, Alright, got it. So, yeah, we good. I know who you are. For an organization. You see me whenever I come.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Here's the meeting. For 50 years. And also, somebody who might have been there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna start in about a minute. Please find your way back to your seats. We're gonna start in about a minute. Our airport folks are ready to give us good stuff.